Shock, do you ever think back on moments in game where you fucked up?
Not really. I don't think I ever made any mistakes. And even if I did, I don't think I ever did anything as bad as soloing Rift Herald and forgetting to pick the eye up.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to episode 19 of the Matchfix. I'm Shock, the Zillion Zoomer and tilter of Titans, and I'm joined by the bot lane gapper and sometimes rapper, Amalg.
Zoomer? I don't even know her.
Week 7 saw the end of the second round robin and actually quite a few interesting changes in the standings. So Amalg, game 1, PGG vs Direwolves, what are you thinking?
I feel like straight from the draft there was stuff going on. I feel like, first of all, obviously, like the signature Shaco pick from Poltron was pretty funny in the coach interview. Alexis was saying like Poltron was begging him to just lock Shaco.
All I hear every day is lock Shaco. I sleep and all I hear is Poltron saying lock Shaco. So we've locked Shaco.
And it went well for them. PGG, on the other hand, I feel like they had a weird draft because we've been talking about how Yuri is kind of like the shining light for PGG, like their light at the end of the tunnel, their hope in the darkness right now. And then they put him on Lissandra. And then they've got Praedyth on Seraphine. And they have like all these tools for going in. Like they've got the Gnar, they've got the Wukong, they've got fucking everything, honestly. But they don't really seem to have any damage to back it up. Like they've got the Seraphine, but like I feel like as a sort of like, it almost feels like a solo damage threat.
I think like they have the damage. I don't know. I kind of like the comp, but I definitely agree that in the late game, there's kind of a lack of consistent damage. But I think like in the early game and the mid game, they should have enough. And it's definitely a comp that is built for that, right? Like built for that really strong mid game spike. So I'm interested. Like you didn't like the draft? I kind of liked it.
Well, it makes sense together. It just feels weird for PGG. I don't know. I just, something about seeing Praedyth on Seraphine.
Yeah, I was thinking that actually.
weird.
When I saw it, I was like, Praedyth on a mage, like maybe not. But I actually thought he played pretty well during the game.
Yeah, it was alright.
Anyway, speaking of the game, I thought the early game for both teams was like a complete mess. Like it was just, for the first 15 minutes of the game, it was actually team deathmatch.
I don't know. It started off with a pretty clean dive from PGG around 6 minutes. They, had a stacked wave from Winterer. They spotted Poltron trying to take his Krugs, got him. But then they go for like a bit of a risky dive onto Zoranus as well. And I think Suman picks up Balkan on the backside of that play. So it ended up being like a 1-for-1. And after that, of course, we've got like the Rift Herald play from, well, it's not really a play. It's more of a lack of a play, like lack of clicking the mouse button in the right direction. Doesn't pick up the eye. And then right after that, he makes a pretty ambitious play mid. It was around 9 minutes, and like they didn't have Wukong ult because of like a mini skirmish at the enemy red buff. Buff. And they tried to gank Suman, right? But he's like playing like at the edge of like the range that he should be, which is good by him. And ultimately, I feel like without the Wukong ult, it's hard to make that play work. And Suman has like a really nicely placed Swain W that just like forces Yuri to like turn around a little bit, and that stalls long enough for Zonas to come in, pick up a kill, get Darkhan's flash. So I feel like Dire was winning for the most of the early game.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's this time in bot lane where Balkan like goes over the wall and he gets picked and dies. And then like afterwards, Rogue gets picked and dies. And then like 30 seconds later, Praedyth gets dived and dies. And it was like, one thing we always had on Divers 2020 was a concept of like chain inting. Like someone would die and then we wouldn't like play accordingly to that. And so more people would die, right? And I think this happens a lot with, well, pretty much just every team, honestly. But a lot of the time, that first death is honestly not that bad. Like, it sucks, right? Yeah. But the real problem comes when, like, people don't really adapt to what that death means, and then they just kind of keep stacking up and just, keep dying and dying.
Yeah.
So, after the early game shenanigans, I think it was like, Direwolves were ahead, but then they had this, like, big throw around the Baron. I think PGG, they got, like, a bunch of picks, and then they got the Baron. So, the game looks just, like, completely over. And then Secret Agent Balkan happened. Like, okay, I actually don't really know what went on for the rest of the game. There was like, they were sieging and he went over the wall to try and kill the Shaco that's on 1 HP. Okay, I think this is kind of troll because even if you get Shaco, I think you still die. And like Shaco was 1 HP, so it doesn't really matter. But it's like, it was far from the worst mistake, I'm sorry to say. I don't think this, again, it's one of those deaths where like, it's better if it doesn't happen, but I don't think it affects the game hugely. But there was just one, maybe like 29 minutes or something like that was just absolutely criminal. Like all of PGG is just like in the Baron River, and he's just trying to chase Ophelios like almost to their tier 2 tower. He's like so separate from the rest of his team, so split. Like, I don't know what he's thinking. There's actually just no follow-up whatsoever. Like the other mistakes that he's made throughout the game, like obviously you can see that they're mistakes, right? But I can kind of see why they happen. But this one, it was like, dude,
out
like,
of nowhere.
I actually don't know what he sees there. Like, I don't get it. And
He was just being permanently Renata altered.
yeah, no, he was actually just like playing Wukong. Monkey Brain got to him. Ooh, ooh, ah! He has to fucking engage, and he just like keeps dying. And so, right, like he dies, and then Direwolves get the Baron, and it's like, okay, well, yeah, that sucks. And then he does like another weird engage on the mid wave, and they all die again. And I don't know. That was just so sad because Winter was like trying his best to win this game, and I liked their draft, but then I don't know. He just got mind controlled.
It's so weird to see this kind of stuff happening when it's like so late into the second split, right? Like it's just these random moments that really just make you scratch your head.
I feel like in split 1, the kind of very stable, strong members of PGG were like, you had this core of like Yuri, Balkan, mid jungle, and then like Praetor was always a late game carry, and then Rogue and Winter, they were kind of solid. They didn't like really win games or lose games. They were just kind of, they were solid, right?
Yeah.
But now it's like one of your biggest like strengths is just running it down pretty much.
He just wants to go and smoke good, dude.
Yeah, no, but he's actually just like he went from just being like consistently strong to just like all over the place. Like he still has good games sometimes, but it's like not nearly enough good games to make up for the bad games. And it's like, yeah, I think the mid meta is not particularly suited to just like 1v9 carry mids. And then we've Praetor on Seraphine duty. So I'm a bit worried about PGG.
To be fair, Balkan specifically did like really well in the game against Kanga. Spoilers. Like he was popular.
He's like 9-1 Lee Sin or something.
Yeah, he was going crazy. But like it doesn't really matter how well you do against like the bottom 4 teams. You need to be able to prove your stuff against the actual good teams, right?
Yeah, and on that note, I wonder if like the need to kind of like prove yourself leads to kind of like overcompensation, like you're kind of trying to force stuff that you shouldn't because you feel like you've got to like redeem your performance sort of thing by making like even bigger performances. And it's pretty hard to get out of that. I think that's where a lot of slumps kind of come from is like, you play bad and then you try and do more to make up for it, and then you just kind of keep ending. So yeah, there's definitely still time to work it out, but it's got to be worked out.
Yeah, not much time left. Moving on to the final game of day 2. Once again, Direwolves, this time facing off against Peace. And this was also a very messy game.
That's for sure. I think this game, I honestly like the draft from both teams. I think they've really gone for that Oceanic just through 5 team fight. And I like that. I think maybe the only criticism I sort of have is that Peace don't really have any engage, which I think makes stuff a bit easier. But like the enemy team has to engage anyway. So it's like, there's going to be a fight happening no matter what, right? I don't think it's like you're versus a Pokemon with no engage. So I like the drafts from both sides. And it's interesting to me because I think both of these teams, they play very, very similarly. So when these kind of 2 teams with very similar styles, and I think this happens with players as well, when they kind of meet, I think you really see the team that's kind of just a little bit better at that slowly edge out advantages over the game. And I think that kind of happened this game. There are actually a few fights I think that started a little strangely, like at 16 minutes, like Lisa's doing the Herald, and then like a fight starts, but he's already really low. And then that went for a really long time. It like actually went for like a full minute with a bunch of kills traded back on either side. And then
yeah, that fight actually ended up like even as well, which is really surprising.
Yeah, it was like a 4 for 4 or something, right? It was real crazy. 8 people dead. But then after that, there was just a little, I feel again, Peace giving up just a bit too much. There was like Gangplank getting caught at Dragon.
Like Violet was doing Violet things, like he was farming really, really well, was doing a lot of damage, but it's just like, it's like wasn't quite enough.
It was still close enough that Peace won some fights. Like there was a fight at 30 minutes. That's when like the game was still very, very close at this point. Like I think Direwolves had been like edging out small wins, but the goal was still very close. In this 30-minute fight, Jinx got a fair amount of kills out of this. So they were in a pretty good spot. I think Violet was like 5 and 2 at the time, had like 4 items, and they're looking really, really good. And then I think again, it just kind of came down to that teamfight execution at the Baron at 33 minutes. It's like they have this kind of like weird split fight where Gangplank's kind of separate from the team, which I think is okay because he's got his ult and stuff like that. And he's drawing some people away. So I don't really mind too much what Tien's doing as long as they get the Baron. I think the biggest problem was Gwen and Ari, they had this like flank. And I feel like Swain probably should have been sitting there just like blocking that because I think Swain's DPS on the Baron is, yeah, I mean, it's okay. He's got a Leandries, but it's like, you know, Jinx is going to kill this Baron, right? And I think it was actually kind of crazy how much damage came out. But basically, like, Swain was in the pit and Jinx was like right next to him. And pretty much what happened is like, Jinx has no MR, and this is like a full damage Ari. Very happy to see a damage build for once. And this Gwen comes along, and they actually like one-shot Violet. Like he died literally instantly.
He just got caught like the collateral damage.
Yeah, exactly. I'm pretty sure he died like half his HP to like REW. It was kind of crazy, and I felt like I'm honestly not sure if Swain can stop them, but I feel like you kind of have to try if you want to win this fight. And there's not really anyone else that can do it. Like I think the Lulu goes there, just instantly dies, and I think the Lulu cooldowns are better used on Jinx anyway. And like Xin Zhao has to be on the Baron, right? And Gangplank, he's somewhere else. So there's not really anyone else to do it but Swain. And I'm still not sure if they win it if Swain does it, but I think that is probably what they have to do. And again, it's like those little team fight decisions end up like being really, really big. And I think that is kind of the problem where if you are a team like Direwolves or Peace where you're sort of one-dimensional, like you've really got to be good at the one thing you're one dimension, right? And I think Direwolves were just a bit better at that than Peace, and yeah, Peace.
Yeah, it really is those like small pieces, right? Because like nice. You look at like I guess like you take a step back and look at the bigger picture, and it looks like Peace are just getting fucking destroyed at these Barons, right? They're like just barely like crawling away with their lives. But actually it's just like if they'd done like this one small thing differently, it can end in a win for them. It's just like being able to identify those at the right time is like so important, and you really just can't afford to fuck those up.
Yeah, I think that is like, we always talk about here on stuff like macro, and we were actually saying about Gravitas last week, how you have to have just someone that, you know, calls the shots kind of things. But in those moments and those kind of like split second decision stuff where not everything can be shot called by one person, like that's where individual skill really comes into play.
You need
like,
to know your own.
Yeah, exactly. If you're like really skilled at this, like you will make the difference there, and no one will be able to tell that was because of you, you know, because it's like they will just see you doing your job. And anyway, those moments, they're too individual to be shot called or to be planned out in advance. It really just comes down to the individuals reacting in the moment. And I think that's one thing that Chiefs definitely have in spades, is just like really individually skilled players that makes those moments like always go Chiefs' way pretty much.
And I think it's interesting that seems to be the deciding factor, because Direwolves as a whole just have like way less experience than the players on Peace. So kind of have to wonder how that's happened.
Yeah, definitely not something I would have said before the split. The Direwolves would just be outskilling a team like Peace.
End of week 7. Let's take a quick look at the standings.
Isn't it funny how we call them the standings, but we do it sitting down?
That is quite funny, isn't it?
You don't seem to think it's that funny.
Chiefs, Order, and Direwolves sitting at first, second, and third respectively. All of them had 2-0 weeks this week, and Order winning 4 games in a row. Nice job. Not as good as Chiefs 15 games in a row, but it'll do.
It's going to be hard to catch up to that one.
Peace and PGG dropping behind a little bit. Fourth place, still tied. Just below them is Kanga, now 2 wins behind fourth place. So it's, you know, if they want to make playoffs, they need to pick it up. Lastly, Mammoth and Gravitas sitting in 7th and 8th, both 0-2 weeks. But Gravitas nearly picked up a win against Peace. You know, now that they're officially out of the playoffs running, maybe they'll just start popping off. They're going to be the team that beats Chiefs.
They're going to be the team that wins a lot.
Chiefs popping off, yeah, they're the team that win a lot.
Welcome back to the LCO Stock Market. You know, the global climate is not looking too hot, as we all know. But don't worry, we're going to help you figure out which teams are looking the best to invest in. First off, our winner for the week is going to be a player. And it's going to be a team that we haven't talked too much about because they're just popping off so damn much. And it's Chiefs. And the player specifically is going to be Alidoric. This guy seems to have like transformed Chiefs. Well, they were already dominant in split 1, right? But he's like elevated them to like a higher tier. They're like God at this point.
In split 1, they were definitely good. And I didn't expect Alidoric to have such a big effect, to be honest. Like, I agree it's an upgrade in the support role, but I really felt like Chiefs' issues, or like things that were kind of holding them back were from other areas. But I don't know. It seems Aldoric is the secret sauce and has kind of fixed everything that was wrong with Chiefs. And I think it is funny, like you said, how Chiefs, despite being 15-0, they're probably one of the teams that we talk about the least because like every game that they win is just expected and no one's beaten them yet, right? So, yeah, I don't feel like we talk about Chiefs very much, maybe to our detriment because they're pretty good.
They're all right, yeah.
Maybe just throw a game here and there and we'll get you on.
I'm waiting for the Chiefs Gravitas matchup. Now, there's a bit of a drop in the market because we actually have a double loser collection today. And it's going to be both of the P teams. We've got Peace and PGG. We've kind of been hammering them for a few episodes now, and they haven't really shown us anything to sort of make us change our minds because they're still looking very shaky. They're like a teenager going through puberty. They just have these weird mood swings where they're like suddenly good, suddenly bad. Like we just don't know what to expect from these teams. And while that would suggest that they should be put in the question mark category, it's like reaching the point in the split where it's like, okay, when are you guys going to get your shit together? Because like time is rapidly running out. And if they're not able to figure out where they actually want to go with their team, they're going to have a rough time in playoffs.
Yeah, I think both teams are pretty much in the same boat of being teams that seem like they just have like a ton of skill, but they just don't really perform up to their expectations or they're not quite as good as they should be. And it's really sad for me, obviously, because I like both of these teams a lot. Would much have preferred to see PGG and Peace above Direwolves and Order, but I guess that's why it's a stock market and not a shock market.
Moving on to our question mark. Kanga, once again, they had a period in the last couple of weeks where they looked like a real contender, but now they're 2 wins behind that playoff spot. And we did mention how like they did seem to have, like when they had success, they seemed to have some draft stuff that was sort of recurring. Like they had a very specific style. And I think the question is like, have teams figured out their style? Because they still seem to be drafting very similarly and now they're not really winning as much.
Yeah, I don't know. I think they have had some key bans thrown at them. I've seen like Casio bans, seen some Swain bans here and there. So I definitely think teams are catching on to what Kanga's putting down. And I think, yeah, they are starting to kind of fall behind a bit, you know, 2 wins behind 5th place now. It's definitely not unrecoverable for them, but they are kind of falling off +L+ ratio at this point.
Yeah, Rip Bozo.
Rip Bozo.
According to the Oxford Dictionary, a moment is a very short period of time, but here on the Matchfix, it's just so much more than that, isn't it?
It really is. But before we get into the moments, we have a little bit of Reddit drama. So not once, but twice did Oceania get to the front page of the LOL Reddit, and it's always for such positive reasons.
Of course.
This time, Gravitas being the first team in the world eliminated from the World Championship with their 0-14. That's rough. I actually can't believe someone like knew that.
Yeah.
You know, I did not expect, well, I didn't know that. And I did not expect some random person on Reddit to know it. There was like a second post from like Thomas Shen, like doing an AMA. Some guy on Reddit, Mr. Condensed Milk, asked Thomas Shen, why does your team have 14 players?
Need to ask the team owner for that one.
Yeah, fair enough. But in all seriousness, does everyone get to play? Is they all just trying out different rosters? Or do you just have a lot of subs?
No, the idea is you sign players that are desperate for a chance to play pro and just pick the best 5. Once they're signed, you now contract lock them in case they turn out to be good. So if another org wants them, there's a buyout fee.
Dude, that was insanely based from Thomas Shen. Like, I love how he just said it as it is. And it was also really funny that here's just like the innocent Redditor coming along, ignorant to how the OC scene works, and just gets the full blast from Thomas Shen about what really happens in the land down under.
On a much cheerier note, though, Rogue had a really heartwarming poem that he shared in his pre-game interview.
We're like a caterpillar, right? We're resting in our cocoon all season. It comes to the 3rd round robin, and then we emerge as this gorgeous, beautiful orange and black butterfly.
I just think it could be better if he spent more time keeping Prated alive rather than writing poems.
Yeah, I reckon Kitty thinks so too.
You played an amazing game on Zeri. I believe you went deathless, which is not gonna say like anything, but pretty rare for you because I do know that you like him.
Hello, darkness.
Attention! It's the Captain. How you doing?
Yeah, I wonder if Mac actually knows who the real OG Armored Titan is.
a reverse sweep, which never comes easy. Something that really rubbed me the wrong way was Shock. It took us out in like a Baron fight. He typed in all chat, wrong neighborhood, which is a bit of a meme, but it still makes me angry thinking about it. So
Who knows what's really in those menu log meals, because they got the talent acting a little freaky this week.
It's time for match of the week, baby! Woo!
What?
Couple of wolves in the middle here.
Ow!
Look,
Sorry, that slipped out.
it happens. It happens.
Ow!
They ban away Shaco. They ban away. Oh, that's feeling good. Keep that going. Yes. Yes, I'm feeling relaxed.
Chew that gum.
Wrapping up this week and looking towards next week, got some big matches. Day one, Chiefs versus Order, second versus first place. It's a hard one, but I think I'm going to predict Chiefs to take this.
Yeah, I don't know why. I'm just feeling the Chiefs are gonna win. Not sure.
Yeah.
Not sure really what it is, but
Yeah, because I mean, they haven't been doing well lately, but
Kinda
something
slumping.
tells me. Yeah. No, but seriously, I think that while this should be a close match, I honestly don't think it will be. Like, I don't know. It is second versus first. And admittedly, while Chiefs haven't lost the game yet, they have had a few close games, or at least games that were even for a reasonable amount of time.
yeah, I guess that's
so-
the closest to close you can get
Yeah.
with Chiefs.
I don't think they're like literally unbeatable, and Order's probably the team that has the best chance of beating them at the moment. But I don't think it's going to be enough.
Yeah, I do agree that like Chiefs probably not unbeatable, but it does feel like there is like quite a big gap between them and like the rest of the teams. And this is the first time they're going to be facing off in the third round robin, so it'll kind of set the tone going forwards. First was a second, and then if Order get stomped, maybe Chiefs really are unbeatable.
I think also this will be the first time Hoopers versus Rays in competitive, right?
Ooh,
I think that could be
true.
pretty exciting because Order, they are kind of winning every game right now, and maybe Hooper is the best player in the world, could take down the Chiefs.
That's big to say from you, man.
Well, look, I'm still predicting Chiefs to win. I'm just saying there's a chance.
It's also going to be an Order double feature this week because we've got PGG versus Order Day 2, Game 2 as well. And this one is going to be pretty interesting, I hope. It's just so hard to predict where PGG is going to go. I obviously am going to predict Order to win. How about you?
Well, look, the way I see it is just I love Order. I've always loved
Yeah,
Order,
of
and I
course.
have nothing but great things to say about them. So I do think that Order are going to take the match. It's starting to get to the point where PGG, I definitely think PGG can win, but Order are just consistently better than PGG, and I do think they're the better team. Maybe in a best of one, PGG can still win, but I think if they played a best of 5 right now, I'd be like pretty confident that Order would take it. So I'm willing to hedge my bets with them.
It does feel like Order have been steadily building themselves up over the season, whereas PGG is like the other way around. So I guess it just depends if PGG are like kind of in their trough or not, if they're coming back up now.
Yeah, I feel like it's going to be the week where I really give up on PGG, that they
It
just like
could
come
be.
back and just like 2-0.
I've got an even bigger prediction, and it's that this episode is going to end right now. Thank you for watching once again, and we'll catch you next time for your weekly picks.